Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, public speaking. Every time I talk at an event, people come up to me afterwards and they say, how did you get to be so comfortable? And that tells me a few things. It tells me, number one, people aren't comfortable. Number two, hopefully not because I'm making them uncomfortable, but they're not comfortable if they were doing the presentation. Number two, they're thinking this causes them anxiety. And I hear that a lot. Public speaking for a lot of people is something that's either they're good at it naturally, they want to get better, or they're okay, they want to understand how to get good, or it makes them crazy just to think about it. It gives them anxiety, makes them nervous, causes them stress, and they want to know how they can do away with that and get to a point where they become comfortable. So this is Public Speaking 101. We're not going to try and make you into the next Tony Robbins, for example. We're just trying to see, and we would all love to be Tony Robbins, we're just trying to see if, well, or maybe not. Maybe we would just love to be good, okay? Whoever your sort of archetype is when you think of awesome presenters, that's what you're striving to be. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is not necessarily how to get to that point, but just how to be more comfortable, a little bit better. So if you're great, how can you be amazing? If you're good, how can you be better? If you are nervous, anxiety laden, it drives you wild, how can you get to a point where you feel comfortable and at ease doing it? So we'll walk through a few different things in this video. Try and make sure that you stay focused. If you've got any questions at the end, we'll take some questions. We'll talk about it as a group. So I'll leave some time for that sort of question and answer. But if you're watching this and it's not live and you're thinking, how the heck can I ask questions afterwards? You can't. And you should have been part of the Altitude Student Program. All right, we'll dive right in now. So before we start anything, we've got to think about your own sort of self-assessment, right? So we talked about it a little bit there before, where you see yourself. I want you to do that self-assessment. How does public speaking make you feel? Does it make you feel nervous? And I hear a lot of people will say, no, it doesn't, because nervous is a bad thing, and I don't want to be bad. So no, it doesn't make me nervous. Just like when I ask students, like, are you gonna be nervous for that interview? And they say, no, I won't. Then I kind of wonder, like, what's wrong with you, right? Like you will. And if you won't be nervous, it's either because you don't want it, or because you don't have a pulse. And we hope we hire people with a pulse. So you should be nervous. You should be nervous in certain cases. And I think public speaking makes people nervous. I want to know, if it makes you nervous, then understand that. Appreciate it. Accept it. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and say it doesn't. Accept it. If you think you're very comfortable in it, then I want you to think about what are the things that are going to make you better at it. So think of the people that you've seen present and go, oh man, you're watching that presentation with the lens of, I wonder what are those little things they're doing that sort of set them apart. So watch this video in the frame of mind of what are some of the things I can pick up for tips, or if you're in that nervous category, what are the things that I can do that are more basic? So if I talk about something that's a little bit more sort of faster paced or a little bit more advanced, if you would, you can totally ignore a lot of that. I'm not trying to make this sensory overload or have you drink from the fire hose. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that I give you the basics. And something digestible. But I need to do it also for a wide range of people. So apologies if sometimes I go a little bit too advanced, or sometimes if you are more advanced and you feel like I'm not quite there yet. Hopefully there's some good stuff throughout the entire video that'll help you. But we kick off with preparation. And this is actually a good tell for me of people that are nervous. And I used to make this mistake a lot. I used to say, if you prepare a lot, it's because you're nervous. And I've realized that's not true at all. A lot of people just like to prepare, okay? But I want to know is, are you preparing because you think you're going to be nervous? And so that preparation allows you to sort of strip away some of those layers of nerves because you're feeling like, okay, I'm well prepared, nothing could go wrong. If that's the case, then I want you to think about what it is about preparedness that really drives you to be comfortable, okay? So pause on that for a second. If you're the kind of person that doesn't prepare a lot, because you're thinking, oh, I'm good, I can just wing it, and we hear this sometimes, then my question to you is, do you have enough of a subject matter expertise on the topic you're talking about so that you can wing it? Have you had a lot of success winging it in the past? And then I hope that if you're winging it, that's also because you are extremely comfortable. If you're winging it and you're not comfortable, recipe for disaster. If you're preparing and you actually are someone that really is better off when you kind of wing it and go with a little bit of a wireframe as opposed to full preparation, recipe for disaster. If you're the kind of person that is naturally nervous and you're saying, I'm super nervous, I don't love this, I'm not going to prepare, disaster, we know that. If I'm super nervous and I need to prepare and I over prepare, and I feel like I'm just going to use exactly what I've done, practice it over and over and over and over again, and then deliver it in that way to the audience, it's going to be robotic and recipe for disaster. So there's a few pitfalls here that I want to cover. So we talk about preparedness. The first thing I want all of you to do is when you're thinking about a topic you want to present on, understand with a self-assessment where you fit with respect to your ability to talk educatedly or intelligently on that topic. And so, if you think about the topic as being something that you're sort of so-so, you've got sort of an elementary understanding of it, you might want to prepare and beef up some of your knowledge so that you can speak intelligently to it. If it's a topic that you're very comfortable with, where you feel like, hey, I know a whole lot about this, I'm a subject matter expert in the space, you probably need a little bit less of sort of prepping for the understanding or to be able to speak intelligently to it. You probably need a little bit more prep in terms of wireframing or outlining how you want to talk. And so if you're in that first category where you need to do that prep to understand more about it, you're going to do a little bit of upfront homework. And so the preparation stage I call here is homework. For homework, you need to make sure that you're trying your best to understand the topic to a degree that allows you to speak to it intelligently. So if I'm going to come on here and talk about how to make French toast and do a presentation on that, I very well could. Just so happens I'm not a great chef, right? So I'd put myself in that category of I need to do some homework. And so the way that homework starts and looks for me is I would start to watch some videos. I'd start to see first, and I'm not looking at presentation style, so I'm not trying to see who are those fantastic, enthusiastic, charismatic presenters. I'm looking more for who are the real good subject matter experts that I can start to learn from. The point of this is not for me to be able to go out and be able to make French toast. The point of it is for me to be able to understand enough about the topic that I can speak in a way that I feel confident and intelligent about what I'm speaking about. So I'd do some research that way. I might do some Googling. I might read up on the topic, find out what I can about it. I like to use sort of a method where I try to ask myself a lot of questions. I almost sort of pretend like I'm lecturing to an audience. I pretend like I'm lecturing to an audience, sort of like, as if I'm doing like a university course to people, even though it might just be me in my bedroom talking to myself, or me in the shower sometimes just rehearsing it. And that way, as I'm talking to it, if I stumble or realize I don't know something, I can go back and research. So that might be the prep that I would do if I'm in that homework stage. If I go beyond that homework stage, and I get into the phase where, okay, I'm a subject matter expert into it, I need to build my wireframe, then what I've got to do is I've got to start to think about how I want to outline the topic. And if you did the homework, you now have to graduate to this stage. If you didn't have to do the homework, you have to start at this stage. And so let's think about that. First, what you're going to do is you're going to say, here's the order of things that I want to talk about. And even for this video, for example, and I made that. And so I like to put them on little Post-its and I stick them around, and you can see I've got the order of everything I want to talk to. Now, because we're talking about public speaking and I do it for a living, I love it. I've had a lot of practice in it. I'm not necessarily going to break down and do all that early homework, but I do want to make that wireframe. So the wireframe is going to start with what is the order of things that I want to talk about. And then depending on how comfortable I am with the subject, I will start to do a second wireframe off of each topic. So my first bullet here, if I look at my Post-it note, I'll try and bring that up to the camera. So my first bullet, apologies for the terrible writing, but my first bullet there says how to prep. And when we're thinking about how to prep, I might have another bullet shoot off of it that then talks about, the intricacies of sort of assessing. So this is how I assess. This is the wireframe, this is the homework, and so on. Those would be sort of my sub-bullets within that wireframe. You could definitely do that, and you would outline, you would kind of have it in front of you. You'd have a bunch of papers, you could have it outlined right in front of you and be able to use it. If you're presenting to an audience and you're standing up, you're going to want to do some work to memorize that wireframe, and that's why the wireframes need to be as skimpy or as small as possible. But even if you're presenting to a large group, if you've got a podium, you can use Post-it notes, you can use some paper. You don't want to obviously rely on it, but it's there as a bit of a crutch for you if you need need it. And it's also there to give you some comfort or make you feel a little bit easier about it. But that preparedness around building that wireframe is key. I like to keep the wireframes so simple because I want to remember them. I want to remember them by heart. I want to know the order. I want to know what are the things I'm walking through. And so if I'm talking about 20 different things in a presentation, that's a lot. If it's a lot for me, it's a lot for the audience. And so how do I distill it and condense it down to something that's manageable, something that they can take and digest? Now, a video is a little different, right? Because a video, people can pause, they can take notes, they can watch it later, they can watch only the segments that apply to them. But if you're talking to people in a presentation, you're doing some public speaking, and again, that's what this is really all about, you want to make sure that you're giving it to them in digestible chunks. So you'll see that I often break things down when I speak into sort of 3, maybe 4, sometimes 5 at the most elements that I want to leave with people. So if I was given a list of 20 things and I started making a 20 bullet wireframe and then I had some sub bullets, I'd never be able to remember that. So don't even try, right? And in fact, even if you could, your audience would get lost in the message. So for your prep, think about that and distill it and sort of keep it truncated and small and condensed down to that smallest possible version. So then what you do is you start to, even though you're delivering the same amount of information, you're still going to give those 20 points. You will, but you're going to do it in a way that's digestible. So you're going to pull them together into what are the common pieces, and you'll start to group them that way. So I could have, I look here, I've got 10 on my list. I could have probably in reality broken that out to about 20. I've got 10 because it's a video. If I was doing this live, I would have absolutely grouped it in, like I say, 3, 4, maybe 5 chunks. So if you think about AOO, which is something we talk a lot about at Scotia, attitude, opportunity, and ownership, I love it because it's 3. It's 3 things. It's simple. When someone says to me, what do you look for in leadership? And I immediately can go to 3 things that I look for, right? So integrity, inclusive leadership, and transparency. And you see how it stays with me? I don't need to pause. I don't need to remember it. I don't need to pull up notes. I don't need to Google it because it's digestible. Now, if someone said like a list of 20 different items that I needed to think about when I'm talking about someone's leadership, I'd never be able to rhyme it off. And therefore, it's almost useless to me because yes, I might get the core message, but I can't speak confidently about it later. So therefore, the message is watered down and lost. So when you're preparing, do your homework. If you don't, whether you've done that homework or you don't need to, you graduate to the next stage. This is wireframing. And when you're wireframing, keep it small, keep it condensed. If it's a video, you can go a little bit more. But if really you're presenting live, which most of you are, and that's what this course is for, then I want you to think about those 3 to 5 items, okay? Let's keep it 3 to 5 items, bullet them, think about them, make sure you can speak intelligently to each of those pieces, and then you can remember that in your mind. And that way, if you ever get tripped up, you can always bring back to it. And we're going to talk about segues a little bit later. And when I talk about segues, this actually will come back because what you're going to see is that your ability to group them all creates a lot of natural segues. And in fact, it's funny I say that because segues is one of my bullets, but really, as you can see, it didn't need to be, right? If I was doing this in person, I would have grouped that in to the prep. I might have called it something else, but I would have pulled segues right in so that later people can recall the things that are important to them, but it wouldn't have been a laundry list of 10. It would have been clumped together in a group. So we'll move on to our next topic in a sec, but hopefully this is something that no one underestimates the importance of. Again, it doesn't need to be a long, lengthy process if you're very comfortable with the topic or you're a comfortable presenter. But the pitfall here is if you over prepare and you think that you really need to memorize your speech, you're wrong. You are having a conversation, and that's what we're going to talk about soon. All right, so if you're going to have a conversation with people, because that's what a good presentation is. It's a conversation. It's not meant to be, I'm going to read off slides or I'm going to even lecture to you. Because at the end of the day, if the audience feels like you're having a conversation with them, then they're engaged. And if they're engaged, then they want to participate, but also you've got their attention. And there's a lot of cues that you can see, right, as to how whether they're paying attention or not, but also how the things that you're saying are hitting, right? Every audience is different, and knowing your audience is critical, right? So one of the things that I do, and this is early stage, when you get into the room. So if you're going to present, you get into the room. I want you to canvas the audience. Don't stand up at the stage. Don't mingle with your friends because you're nervous. Because again, if you did the prep in the wireframe, right? Well, and we'll talk about nerves a little bit later, but if you've done that stuff, you should feel a little bit more confident. So I don't want you talking with friends. What you should be doing is you should be actually out in the audience, right? As they're coming in, talk to them. People sit in the front row, go down and talk to them. Kneel down, ask them how their day is. Ask them a question about for example, if I'm on campus and I'm talking to a student at UBC, I might bring up something I saw in the news recently for Vancouver. Or I might sit down and say so hey, what year are you in? And they'll say, oh, I'm in first year. Wow, how are you liking UBC so far? Great. Where are you from? Are you from Vancouver? No, I'm actually from Calgary and I moved out here. Wow, did you move out alone? You see how that sort of changes. And what I'm getting is not necessarily information that I'm going to pull into the presentation, but it's not necessarily not information I'm going to pull into the presentation. And we're going to talk about that when I talk about how to pull your audience in, because what you'll see is that there are certain things that you'll get that might resonate nicely with your message, and if you use those later as a presenter and you're able to directly make it applicable to someone in the audience, everyone all of a sudden feels a little bit more connected and it feels like it's applicable. And that's key. So yes, you want to have the conversations for that reason, but you also want to have the conversations so that you're building sort of a rapport with this individual. This individual now is going to be engaged in your presentation. And it's great to have people that are engaged sort of spread throughout the room. So I will actually walk around the room to different people and I'll have these sort of short, quick conversations before I present. I'm also trying to get a feel for how the room is. Is this room sort of a room that loves to laugh? So if my conversation's early going, I might throw out a few jokes. If it turns out they love to laugh, then great, I'm going to use that more. If it turns out they don't love to laugh, then maybe I'm going to stick more to energy, and we'll talk about brand in a second. I might stick more to sort of the really good content and being passionate. But I feel it out to know the kind of way that I want to do that. Now we're talking a little bit of an advanced topic, so don't get me wrong, it's a bit of an advanced topic, but still knowing your audience and sort of setting the tone with them early on, especially in pockets across the room, is crucial. I also think it guarantees you will never lose the room. So that's really important. The other thing when I talk about knowing your audience is who are you presenting to, right? Are you presenting to a bunch of your peers? Are these young people? Are these older people? Are these professionals? Are these subject matter experts? And that's how you're going to tailor your tone. And when you think about tone, I generally have a brand, which, again, we're going to talk about in a second. But if you think beyond brand, it's going to be how deep you want to go into the topics, right? So you need to know your audience before you even get there while you're doing that wireframe to know how deep your wireframe should go based on who you're talking to. Now, if you're talking to peers, which a lot of you will be early days, and not just, I don't mean peers just as necessarily like I'm in third year, they're in third year. No, I mean sort of beyond that. These are people that have relevant experiences to you, relevant understanding, similar understanding of sort of work experience or school experience, whatever it is that you're discussing. And so if you're looking at that group overall, I want you to be able to think to yourself, okay, that's what they know. They've come from a similar mindset as I do on this topic, though they might have different opinions. And so that sets me up early days to be able to best prepare for the audience that I'm going to be talking to. And then lastly, if you've done that and they've come in and you've talked to them and you've set up some people, some fans in the room, right? Because you've created that early rapport and they feel like, hey, there's a nice person, someone that cares about me. So I'm going to listen that much more. Those are the people that later you're going to bring in from the audience into the presentation, which we'll talk about soon. So before we talk about bringing people into the presentation and your brand on stage, there's a really, really important thing I want to talk about, which is confidence, okay? Now, confidence is key when you're presenting, because if you present and you don't have that confidence, what's going to happen is people are going to automatically assume you don't know as much as you may know. And that's not fair, right? It's not fair. You actually might be an expert on it, but because you lack confidence, people will question you. They'll wonder, do you lack confidence because you don't really know what you're talking about? And if that's the case, you're selling yourself short, right? Let's also take a step back and realize just how humans are. So, if you get up there and you look great and you're polished and you look the part and you open your mouth, and what comes out is a lot of hesitation, or you're looking down, or you're nervous, or you're sort of like, hey, my eyes are kind of, I don't want to really make direct eye contact. I'm looking in the back of the room. If that's the case, no matter what you say, it's watered down. It's lost credibility. And don't do that. Don't cut yourself off at the knees. So confidence is really, really important in this. And I know a lot of people watching right now are rolling their eyes because they're like, easy for you to say, but if I'm up there and I'm not comfortable with the topics, or if I'm up there and I don't really love public speaking, it's hard for me to be confident. I totally understand that. I do. And so what I'd say to you is practice makes perfect. And I don't mean practice on the presentation you're about to give, because a lot of times practice too much doesn't make perfect, as we talked about. It makes you a bit of a robot. But I think that practice makes perfect in the sense of the more that you get yourself into chances to present about anything, the better you'll be and more confident you'll be about your ability to present. And I see that. It's not, I think in your minds, a lot of people have this idea that if I present once, I might be super nervous and not confident. If I present twice, it's not going to make that much of a difference. 2, 3, 4, you'd be really surprised. Once to maybe 5 times presenting, and I mean presenting in front of nice groups as yourself on the stage, your mastery, if you would, of confidence and in your ability to present is going to go way up. It shoots up really quick. There's a fast trajectory there. And so get that experience. There's a lot of different opportunities. Seek them out. Go for them. Be part of groups like Toastmasters, for example. That's to build that confidence. And the other thing, and you'll hear this a lot, I hear a lot of people say, fake it till you make it. I don't know that I necessarily, that necessarily resonates with me, but I hear a lot of people say it, and what they really mean, because sometimes I'll ask them and say, what do you mean by that? And they say, well, look for that little bit of extra almost might or courage inside of you and pull it out. Even if you're out of your comfort zone, you want to pull that out of yourself for this presentation. And what I find happens to people that do that is, early on, though they're kind of, they're faking it, if you would, right? Early on, they're coming out a little bit more, maybe they're a little bit more boisterous, or maybe they're a little bit more energetic right off the get-go than they might normally be. When it hits with the audience early on, it gives them that boost they need to actually not fake it, but now they're riding that high, which is confidence as they drive through the presentation. So I've often told students this story. It's sort of embarrassing, but moments in my life where I've really needed confidence to do something, go out of my comfort zone, where I've actually given myself a pep talk, right? And one famously, we can talk about this later. I'm not going to get into the full story now, but actually sitting in my car, pulling my rear view mirror, looking down at it and saying, all right, Shelsen, let's do this. And the reason for that is because I needed that jolt. I needed that extra bit of energy to go out and be super confident. And so if you have to do that, hey, you got to do it. But at the end of the day, what I want you to do is remember that if you are not confident, you're hurting yourself. You're watering down the message, and people will not give you the credibility you deserve because of that. And so sometimes non-confident presenters will complain later and say to me, like, I said everything, like I walked through everything I prepared. I was articulate. I knew my subject really well. Why was that not a great presentation? And all it came down to was confidence. And so if you're that kind of person that fake it till you make it rings true, do that. Start off with the fake it till you make it. But otherwise, I really believe in the putting yourself in enough experiences of presenting so that learning curve, the learning curves decrease, but so that your ability to master it is just, the trajectory is really great. And you'll see it doesn't take 20, 30 times. It doesn't take 10 years of experience. It's 5, 6, 7 times doing it. You're going to be like, wow, I am infinitely better than when I started. So remember that, really key. All right, so the next one is your brand on stage, and this is really, really, really important. All right, when I think about your brand on stage, what it is it's what you want to convey or what you want people to think about when they are just observing. So pretend that they weren't listening to your words. Pretend they could hear you, but pretend that they were taking in your body language, they were taking in your hands, they were taking in, your eyes, the way you were speaking, the way you were looking around the room, your confidence, all of that stuff. They were taking that in and they were making a judgment about you. That to me is your brand on stage. And what I find is a lot of people will try and mimic or copy other people's brands because they see someone present and they go, wow, I want to do just like that. And so they go out there and it falls flat. Or it goes out there and it's a little bit better maybe than what they had done before, but it's not great. And a lot of this is because you're betraying your own brand, like you're trying to be something you're not. So I often say, if you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't be funny. And a lot of people will say, well, people who are funny and they get out in front of people and they do presentations, they have it easy because they make the audience laugh. When the audience laughs, it gives you a boost of confidence. And just talking about confidence like we had before, that is true. I mean, a great joke will drive confidence, okay? I know I should have talked about this in the other section, but it's true. A great joke will drive confidence because they laugh and you feel like, wow, they love me, they accept me, they're laughing. So if you've got something good or if you want to pick up something good, start with that. That's a great idea for confidence building. But if you are not funny and you try to make these jokes consistently throughout the presentation, what you'll find is that though someone else might have delivered those jokes, the comedy is all about the timing and the intonation and all of that stuff, the setup. And if that's just not who you are as a person, you'll lack on some of those, and it'll actually make it awkward. And so you're betraying your brand. So don't betray your brand. What I would encourage you to do though is I would encourage you to think about what are the pieces that you have in your brand that you'd like to bring out that will resonate with the audience. We talk about knowing your audience. And so if you know your audience, you can try to say, what is it about me? What do I have that I can put out there in front of these people? And I'll give you some really great examples of things that I think a lot of you have you can easily pull on. So there's a lot of funny people. That's a great one. There's a lot of energetic people, right? The thing I love about energy is maybe you're not at your funniest that day. Energy is a great one because you can always be energetic. There's no reason not to be energetic, right? So if you got that energetic side, you can pull that one out. And maybe that's exemplified in a brand with some really strong body language, lots of movement. If you've got, if you're a fast talker, I'm a talker, I love to talk, then those kinds of things will complement that energetic brand. You might also do sort of the deadpan, the confident deadpan. So timing is your friend there. And that's not necessarily all to make jokes. I don't just mean it from a funny way. But you might do it more of that sort of persona that you put on. And I think of someone like Irina Levko, who does that really, really well with that deadpan, keeps it throughout, and that becomes her brand. And people, if I tried to do the deadpan, it would actually be terrible. It wouldn't work. No one would buy it. It would be awkward. But Irina could do it, and I could watch her and be like, I did the exact same thing. Well, why don't you guys love this? Well, it's because she has mastery of that brand. I do not. So don't try and be that, okay? Now, another really good one, if you ask me, is that sort of friendly, sweet, bubbly. And a lot of you have that as well. And so I think of someone like Emma Johnston, right? Emma's friendly and she's bubbly and she's sweet. She's got this great voice. And so if she gets out there and does that, and I was thinking about it, but I'm not going to imitate her. But if I went out and did that kind of sweet, bubbly thing, it would fall flat. You guys would be like, what's wrong? Like, is he on recreational drugs? So I want you to think about, can you be that? Is that sort of you naturally? Or Jahanvi, for example, on our team has that as well. And if that's something that you can pull off, then that's great. It resonates with the audience because they say, wow, she's so nice and friendly and helpful and sweet. And those things still bring the audience in. And then the last one that I want to talk about is those who are really passionate about a topic. Don't confuse the passion with the energy, although I think they go really nicely together, and charisma kind of, envelops them all. But you can be passionate without being too super energetic. And I think about that, a lot of TED Talks are like that, right? So if you watch a lot of TED Talks, they're not necessarily the funniest people. They don't try to be, most of them. Sometimes they don't even have that really high energy. You don't have a lot of people that are talking really fast, but they're really passionate, and you can tell. And that's what brings you in. Because if you are drawn to the subject, or if the subject is presented to you in a way that you care about it, what's going to happen is that now all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, like I love how passionate that person is. I want to know more. I want to do more. And I get that a lot from students. For example, people will say, one of the reasons I want to work at Scotiabank is because I can tell you love what you do. So yeah, I think those things go a long way. And those are there's more obviously, but those are some simple buckets that you can kind of put yourself in, right? To see where it is that you might go. So you've got that funny, you've got the energetic, You've got the sort of the deadpan, more serious, more stoic. You've got the bubbly, the friendly, and you've got that passionate side. So some really good ones for you to choose from. I imagine most of you can fit into one of those, but if not, like I say, there are more brands that you guys can take on. All right, so now that I've got this awesome sort of preparation done, I've got my wireframe, I did my homework, and then I went out and I said, all right, I know my audience, I got to know them, I met different people across the room, I've established what my brand is, I feel confident. The next thing to do is to make sure that you're bringing the audience into your presentation. This is really, really, really important. I think a lot of times people sort of view presentations as, I'm delivering to a faceless group of individuals, almost like I'm delivering to a curtain. They just happen to be there watching me. And that's never going to be the recipe for success here. And I think sometimes you get this advice. Sometimes people will say, well, if you're nervous, pretend like, obviously you'll hear, pretend like everyone's naked or in their underwear. I don't know why I said naked, but in their underwear. Whatever that necessarily means, I don't really know. But what I can tell you is you have to remember that there are human beings in the audience. And someone once taught me something really cool about conversation, which is conversations are transactional, and every conversation is a transaction, right? So you're going to give me something, and I'm going to give you something. So you're going to give me your attention. I'm going to teach you something. You're going to give me your attention. I'm going to make you laugh. You're going to give me attention. I'm going to make you feel something. You're going to give me your attention. I'm going to give you some attention, right? All of it is transactional. So if I'm standing there and I'm not teaching you anything, I'm not making you laugh, I'm not making you feel something, some emotion, then you're not going to pay attention. And so let's use a quick example, right? So if I stood up there and said something outrageous, right? Think of Donald Trump, right? Stands up there and says something outrageous. He's just won that transaction, right? He's given you something. And now you've given him something back. You've given him attention. So he's got what he wanted. He wanted that attention. He said something outrageous. It made you feel something, whether it was excitement and you agreed, or whether it was anger, but you felt it. And so therefore you gave him your attention. This is one of the things I don't understand why CNN doesn't realize. They keep losing the transaction. He wants something, they keep buying. But when you think about that sort of impact of those transactions, you can't possibly be up there constantly making them feel something. I mean, you could, and I think about people like, for example, we've had a Paralympic athlete come and talk to us. The entire time that they're talking, you feel something, and you feel that what you're feeling makes you pay attention. And so if you can't do that, you can't make them feel something the entire time. You can't make them laugh the entire time. You think about a comedian. Essentially, that's what comedians do, right? They make you laugh constantly, and so you pay attention. If they have lulls or boring spots in their set, you kind of lose them, right? Because again, they're not delivering their end of the bargain. You said you wanted my attention. I said you'd make me laugh. Or you said you want my attention. Well, you told me you'd make me laugh, and you haven't done it. And so remember that, guys, because if you've told them, come here and learn about this, you've got to deliver on that, but it's impossible that the entire time you're presenting, they're learning nonstop. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's unlikely. And so what you need to do is you need to resort to the lowest form of that transaction, the easiest form, if you would, which is, I'll give you attention if you give me attention, right? And so stop pretending like it's this, blank audience and your eyes sort of glaze over. Don't do that, right? I was once given the advice early days when I first started presenting a lot that it's good to fix a spot on the horizon, right? Think of the back of the room. Guys, that's the worst advice ever. Don't do that. It makes you look like you're a zombie. Now, if I was let's say a genius in aerospace, and I was might be the best in my field in the world, and I was talking to a whole bunch of people in my industry, then I would actually be okay if I was teaching them something the entire time, and I stared at the back of the room, because they've come to learn. I've delivered on what I'm learning. But again, for most of us, that's just not the case. And so I'm resorting to this ability to give you some attention. So I'm going to look at the audience and I'm going to say, as I continue to present, I look at them, and what this does is it gives them that bit. Okay, you gave me some attention, I'll give you some attention. So if they were going to look at their phone because you promised them something, you weren't delivering, so now they pull out their phone. You watch that, and now all of a sudden you've lost some confidence because you're thinking, oh, they're not engaged, and so it starts to kill you. But if you look at them, they're less likely to want to be distracted by something else. They also feel like, oh, talking to me? And so they get right into it. And so use that to your advantage. And one of the best things you can do for that, especially when you're looking at somebody, is add smiles to your presentation, right? So when you smile, even if you've got, I don't have a movie star smile, but whatever smile you got, you can look at people right in the audience, and if you smile at them, they'll smile back at you. And that's a really cool thing about a smile. It's contagious. It really is. Try it. And so if you're able to bring people into the audience just like that, and then they come in, now all of a sudden I've been able to fill up their time. So I've been teaching them things for part of the time. I've been making them laugh for part of the time. And maybe I've made them feel something by saying something maybe a little bit controversial, or maybe something that that's a little bit more groundbreaking. And I've also given them attention. I'm constantly delivering on my end of the bargain and the transaction. And now they're delivering on their end, which is they will pay attention. So really, really important. And in the beginning, like I said, you're going to go around and you're going to find out who those people are in the audience that you want to sort of connect with. What you can also do is not only are those easy ones you can look at because you've built that rapport, but and obviously you don't look like you're frantic or on cocaine, but I want you to look at people in the eye and pay attention to them and talk to them, move to the others, and you'll see them nodding along with you, and that's really encouraging. It's the opposite effect of I pulled out my phone, which is discouraging. Now all of a sudden they're nodding along, or they're laughing along, or they're smiling along, and so now you feel that extra boost. And so going back to confidence, that's that boost you need right there, right, to keep going. And so the last thing I'm going to say is those little bits that you might have pulled out from somebody. So I talked to somebody, and I'll use that example again. It's UBC. They're in first year. I sat down. How do you like UBC? And let's say when I was talking to them, one of the things they said is, I really like it here. I just hate the fact that it rains all the time. If I'm talking to the students, I can then be like, and let's say it's a sunny day, I can say, guys, I absolutely love that I got a sunny day. I mean, look, you guys get all these crappy days all the time. I got the sunny day. And they'll laugh because now it's relevant, and that person in the audience is going to laugh, and you can even call them out. You can say, I was talking to John, and John made this really great point about there being no sun in Vancouver. And so John feels like he's part of it. The audience can relate to it. And they feel like you're now approachable, humble. There's no sort of curtain there. You've broken that down. You've gone into the audience. You've broken that, the what do they call it? The fourth wall or whatever. You've gone out and you've been able to do it. I'm thinking in my head, like, is it really the fourth wall? Who knows? Anyway, you guys will Google it and figure out what I mean. But you've broken that down. And you're now part of it. And again, it becomes more of a conversation and less of a lecture style approach. And that is really, really, really important to getting audience buy-in, which again will only serve to encourage you. Okay, this one's not going to be too long, but let's talk about segues because, and I don't mean those weird things that you drive around in, although I did do a Segway tour in Chicago once and it was really great. You see what I just did there? I tried to bring something that I've got, and I tried to bring it into my presentation. That's one form of segue, right? So I took something, maybe I wanted to tell you about maybe a story, and I used the presentation or the actual topical information to bring it in and make it relevant. Sometimes people have stories, right? So we often tell presenters, use stories, right? Make it relevant. Bring the audience in by telling them a story. Make it something that allows you to shine. You feel comfortable talking about. So I've got this really great story I can talk about where I met this supermodel on a plane, and but if it has nothing to do with my presentation, if it has nothing to do with everything I'm talking about, then obviously I don't think I should be bringing it into the conversation, right? So make sure that it's topical, that you can segue in and out of that conversation. So, if I talked about segues, that's a nice easy segue into those weird things that you drive around. And I was in Chicago driving around, and let's say there was some other topic about my segues during that Segway tour. This would be like Segway pandemonium. But if I had that would be wonderful, and I could bring that right in, and everyone would laugh, and I'd feel good, and I shared a story, and so on and so forth. So stories are great, but make sure that they're applicable. And when you think about segues, because I talked about the wireframe and how you guys are going to break down the presentation, it's always great to be able to go back into other topics and say, as we discussed here, this. Or to transition to another is to end it. So you might find that end it on a high note and end it on something that's relatable to another topic. So what I mean is a lot of times especially as you guys get better, and if you choose my style, which is I try to have some comedy, but I really look at sort of the energetic and the passionate brands that I try to bring out. If you look at that and you look at how quick I talk, what you know is that I could be at risk a lot of times of rambling, right? Because I'm going, and my brain's sort of following along, and my brain's like, okay, make sure that everything you're talking about is relevant. Don't get off topic. Don't ramble too far. And so one of the things you've got to learn how to do, especially if you're going to take that more energetic approach, is you've got to make sure that when you go out that you're able to pull it back in. And your ability to do that is going to save you and make it not look like rambling, but look like it's actually all a giant plan as to how you are going to relay this point. And so what I do is I keep that wireframe in my mind at all times. And every sort of time that I feel like I am getting a little bit lost in my speech, I think about the wireframe. I picture it there. And again, because it's simple, common pitfall, people have these really long lists for their wireframe. But because mine is simple, I can bring it back to some of those key themes, right? And so if I'm able to do that and retrace it and pull it back into the topic that I'm talking about, it makes it relevant. Makes it look like I'm not rambling. Makes it look like I've got this master plan. But really, that is something that I want you guys to all think about. Maybe not necessarily something for someone who's more of a beginner, but for some of you that are a little bit more advanced, that love presenting and feel comfortable, you're trying to go to that next step. I would say that's something really, really key to remember. So that if I ramble, how do I bring it back in? And if you know your topics well, and if you have outlined your thoughts with the wireframe, it becomes really easy. It's just a matter of practicing that. So think about that. Maybe in your next presentation, think about how can I sort of go deeper into a topic and then segue into the next one, or pull back a topic that I had talked about before, because I think that's really important. So remember that when you're talking about different pieces. And again, what I'll say is that plays really nicely into that planning stage, because if you've planned well, you can segue a lot better. Okay, fair. See what I did there? Okay, this one is tough on video, body language. I was going to do a section on dressing the part, and then I showed up in sort of a orange, peach, salmon maybe hoodie, because it was cold down here in the studio, right? But I in fact, maybe it doesn't look like a studio. Maybe let's just say I'm in darkness. I'm in the woods at night. But I think dressing the part, guys. I'm just going to touch on it for 2 seconds. Dressing the part is important, but I also think it plays to confidence, which we talked about earlier. And what I mean by that is, if you feel confident by looking good, and that matters to you, then do it and look good. If you love doing your hair a certain way, putting curls in, or maybe if it's a guy having like your sweet flow, whatever that is, do it, because that's going to help you. It's going to bring out the best. It's one less thing you have to worry about when you're presenting. Oh man, they're going to see that zit. Oh man, I'm having a bad hair day. Oh man, this jacket doesn't go with this shirt. Whatever it is, guys, that's one extra thing for you to worry about and create anxiety. So if you dress the part, dress to make yourself feel comfortable, dress to make yourself feel good and confident, really, 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 really important. And I think body language is sort of something that comes a little bit more natural when you are dressed well, right? And see what I did there on the segue, right? See how I brought in dressing into body language? You see what I mean? Okay, you guys are starting to get it. So when you decide to talk about body, or when you decided to have good body language, there's a lot of different body language that I think works. There's videos online that'll tell you, like, here's how to have amazing body language so that every woman will love you. I don't know that works, but you could try it and see. No, I don't know that any of that stuff works. I don't. But what I can tell you is that body language for me is something that I've learned over time how to be a little bit better at it. So my posture is natural. I'm a little bit more hunched over naturally. So I think, I try to remind myself, roll my shoulders back. Doesn't mean pumping my chest out, right? Hello there. Uh, Instead, just get to a comfortable position. Don't be too stiff. I like to use my hands more than I did when I was younger and I was learning how to present. And because I think it conveys more energy, right? I think it brings people in. I do know though that on the audience, when I'm standing, and sorry, in the audience, on the stage, when I'm standing, I sometimes get carried away with my hands, right? And I might almost like reach out to someone and grab them. So if that's the case and you're like me, what I try to do is I try to have something in my hand, a water bottle, a microphone, a clicker. And that really, really helps. So if that's a tip, if you guys want to do that, I think it helps a lot if you're sort of really too crazy with the hands. I love my Italian friends because they're always crazy. My Greek friends with the hands, and they do, that stuff, guys, it's good, but it can be distracting too much. Now in a video, I do try to do way more because I'm sitting down and I'm in this black darkness. And so I'm trying to give you some visual cues or something to pay attention and something to distract you from just my face. So I overdo it here on purpose. But on stage, I'm going to hold something and I'm going to have sort of more relaxed movements. I'm going to point at people. I love to point, right? Because again, pointing brings people in. If I point at you, you're into this. It didn't really focus there, but you get where I'm going with this. So if I think about overall how you're able to use your body language to your advantage, you can think about what are some of your pitfalls. What are some of the things that you do? So if you're hunched, don't be hunched, right? If you talk too much with your hands, have something in your hands. If you always look at the ground, tell yourself to look up. Do the eye contact, like I said, with people. If you find that you're a little bit too stiff or you stand still the entire time, teach yourself to move around, right? So for body language, I often talk about what are the things you don't do well. Let's talk about the things you can do well, as opposed to how do we have great body language, right? Do you know what I mean? Because if you start with, I want to just have great body language. What is good body language? Everybody's body language is different, and we expect different body language from different people. If I walked out on the stage all like, oh, people would be like, whoa, that's not that guy's brand. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier on brand. It's faking it. So stick to your brand, but use these smaller cues to be able to improve your body language, or you think you might have weaknesses. So I think that's really, really important when you talk about body language. The other thing I was just going to say is, I'm going to fit it in here, which is tonality and the tone of voice that you've got. So use that tonality and really pump it out, right? You want to be confident. Confident is loud because I'm sure. And I'm proud of what I'm saying. And so be loud, be out there. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. As you can see, and you've seen in the video, that sometimes I'll slip up on my words. We all do, right? Sometimes I'll choose the wrong word. Sometimes I've got a concept in my mind and it doesn't quite come out right. You can laugh at yourself for sure. You can correct. Totally course correct, so don't worry about that. You have to understand that you're not always going to have the right word, but you've got a lot of good words out there. Say them loud, say them proud, and when you think about the tonality of your speech, and again, we're getting a little bit more advanced topics here, so I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but when you're thinking about the tonality of your speech, you should get good feedback from anybody on that, because I find tonality is one of those things that everyone picks up on. It's one of those early pieces of feedback that helps a lot. So you ask someone, hey, how's my tone? They're pretty good without upsetting you at saying like, oh, you could be louder. You could be a little more pronounced. You could have raised this section up a little more because you were really heated in it. You were too fast here. You were too slow there. All of those types of things. Easy feedback to get from people. So I encourage you to go get that feedback. But again, main point on the body language, think about what it is you might not do well. How do you improve it? As opposed to, I want to have great body language. What do I do to have great body language? Because that's sort of the wrong approach to take, at least in my view. All right, guys, general tips. So hopefully this has been valuable for you. I think when it comes to general tips, and I've talked a lot of different tips throughout this this presentation, but what I want you guys to do is remember, and I'm going to kind of summarize or recap a little bit of this. Have the wireframe, okay? Key, have the wireframe. Remember the wireframe. It allows you to bring everything back. It helps you on the segues. It helps you on the confidence. It helps you on the body language and tonality. So have that wireframe. It helps you even on bringing in the audience because you know what to bring them in on. What are the things you can ask them beforehand that might be relevant to your presentation because you've got that wireframe. Keep the wireframe small, right? Keep it really small. Make sure that it's not too big. Again, 3 to 5 topics, that therefore you can remember it, right? Get to know your audience. So be out there, get to know them, get to understand who they are, pull things in, use some icebreakers, small talk. That's good. It's almost cheating, I think, but it's great. It's great cheating. And then think a little bit about what are the things I can do for my confidence, right? So do I need to fake it a little bit? Do I need to give myself a pep talk? Think about that. I think that's really important too. You should also really, if you can, you should try to think about what are some of the people that I really love their presentation style. Can I watch them more? Can I watch them on YouTube? Can I watch videos? Can I go see them live in person? People who might relate more to my brand. So that's a big tip. Don't go and try and mimic people, again, that have a completely different brand. Like I used with Irina Levko. If I tried to do the Irina Levko thing, it would fall flat. If Irina tried to do me, it would fall flat, right? So she's got to try and to pick out maybe a few things from my style that she likes and apply them to her. I'm going to pick out a few things of her style that I like and apply them to me, but never changing my brand, right? That's key. Never change your brand. Stick to it. Just pull out the things you want to highlight, because when you're in a presentation, it's sort of like your brand on steroids, right? So pump out all that good stuff. The only other thing I was going to say is just on the prep, a reminder, do not over prep. Do not over prep. I see these nervous people that over prep way too much, and then they feel great because they're like, man, I cannot go wrong. They get out there and it falls really flat. And then it has the opposite effect, because now they don't want to present at all, because they're like, I've done everything, and they're sort of fed up with it. It's because you over prep. Don't do it. You're becoming a robot. If you had that wireframe, you'd be way better at being a little bit more natural. And again, I know you're rolling your eyes, but if you were able to have a little bit more experience, remember, it's dramatic in terms of how much experience you pick up with every big presentation you do. Okay, so seek out those opportunities. All right, guys, last topic, really quick, feedback. When you're done, any presentation, go get feedback. Go get feedback from people that you think are going to give you the right feedback. And I want to pause on that, or double click on it, as a lot of people say. When you're talking about feedback, the right people are crucial. Don't do a presentation and then go get feedback from someone who's not good in presentations. It blows my mind. I see people do that all the time. They've got maybe a boss who's not a good presenter, and they themselves went out to present, and then they go and ask their boss, how did I do? What can I do better? And then the boss starts to sit them down and say, like, do this and do that and do this and more of that. And you're taking all these notes. Guys, that's crazy. That's like, me trying to learn how to take a harder slap shot, and I'm going to go ask someone who never played hockey before, right? It doesn't make sense. So don't do that. They get the feedback. I mean, if you want to do it to sort of, make them feel good because you asked their opinion, sure, you can do that. But it's not genuine, because really, you should go ask someone who you know is a good presenter and say, what did you think of that? What did you think? Like, how can I improve? What can I do a little bit better? Ask about the tonality. How was my tone? Was I true to my brand? Was I talking too fast? How was my body language? Was I engaging, right? So all of that stuff's good feedback. The other thing is, don't be shy. This is a good one. Don't be shy to ask some of your friends to actually record you. And then watch it later. Go back and see, how did I do? What are some of those little things that I can improve? Because especially, remember I talked about that trajectory, especially as you're doing that sort of third and fourth one, you start to get a lot better at these presentations. It's in that moment that you might want to get down to the more granular stuff. And so if you can watch yourself present, you might be able to look at it and say, I think this is overall pretty good, but I realize I use my hands too much, or I realize I'm a little too hunched over, or I realize I don't do a good enough of a job of the eye contact with the audience, or I missed a few easy opportunities to bring the audience into my presentation. So it's a great idea. Have a friend record it. They don't have to sit there all like awkward and just shooting it. They can just be out there filming it. You can get a tripod. I don't know, maybe that's lame, but it is a great tool. I've recommended it to people before who I've sort of mentored through how to be better presenters, and I'm always surprised at how quickly that helps them sort of develop and learn a little bit more from their own style. So hopefully this was helpful, guys. Again, it's 101, so it's basics. It's meant to be sort of an early sort of kickstart in this. If you're passionate about this topic, let's talk more about it. If it's a topic where you feel like, again, it just gives you anxiety, I hope I've given you some tips to try to get around some of that stuff and build your confidence and become better at it. And I do know this, though. Presentation skills and business go hand in hand. There are so many opportunities you'll have to flex that muscle, so build it. Thanks a lot, guys.